Welcome to the Week 3 Drunken Fumble Commissioner's Address. Before you ask, yes, I'm drinking soup out of a pink cup. You would too if you were me. Good week for football. I was very happy with the way football went fantasy-wise this week. I won in all three of my leagues. Thank you in part to Tevin Coleman, who won me 2 weeks. All three of my leagues came down to the Monday night game, so it was some good football. Let's get to the bold predictions. We're going to skip the first three because I didn't get any of them right. Rodgers had a big night. OBJ was fairly quiet going up against Josh Norman in Washington. He shut him down. I thought Josh Norman was going to go up against their second receiver there in the Giant territory, which is Sterling Shepard, and I figured they'd double team OBJ, but they put Norman on OBJ and he kept him to a quiet night. Luck wins a shootout over San Diego. That did not happen as well. Luck was decent. He only had one touchdown, though. My bonus prediction I did get right. Newton has more picks than throwing TDs against Minnesota. He did have 3 picks, and we'll get into that a little bit here in the matchups. Going to start off with healthy to questionable against Atlanta Falcons. My winless team taking on the first place team, and I do come away with the win. Had a decent day from Jarvis Landry and Deshaun Jackson. And then obviously Tevin Coleman came in on Monday night with 3 touchdowns, 47 reception yards, and 42 rush yards. So the running team for Atlanta was fantastic this week. Jameis Winston was good again for me. He did have 400 plus yards and 3 passing touchdowns. So good performance all around. Biggest name of the game between myself and Will was Marvin Jones Jr. He had 6 catches for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns, giving him a total fantasy points of 38.5. He was ridiculous. I can't believe the amount of yards he got off of just 6 catches. So big performance there for Atlanta Falcons, but they do not get the win, and that moves them to 2-1 and moves healthy to questionable up to 1-2. Going into Bassett Brawlers against Luckjer Gurley. Bassett Brawlers putting up a huge week here. Luckjer Gurley not having any luck. Bassett Brawlers winning 185 to 149. Drew Brees had a big night. Antonio Brown, big as always. Doug Baldwin, 164 yards on 8 catches and a touchdown. He had a 30-point night. And of course, LeGarrette Blount getting 2 touchdowns there and 100 yards. And then the Kansas City defense. What happened to Ryan Fitzpatrick? 6 interceptions. That was a terrible, terrible game to watch. I don't know why they didn't pull him. I don't know what was wrong with him. It was not good. Kansas City defense was 6 picks and 2 touchdowns. And they won that game 24-3. So 36 points there for the Kansas City defense. Next matchup, we got 4th and Lynches against the Underminers. Underminers improving the record to 2-1 with 150 to 112 win over 4th and Lynches. 4th and Lynches still 2-1, good enough for 5th place. In the win, Shady McCoy with 2 rushing touchdowns and over 100 yards. And the Minnesota defense. The Minnesota defense, 42 points. They sacked Newton 8 times. 8 sacks, they had 3 picks, and they had 8 tackles for a loss. They were unbelievable. Unbelievable. 42 points there. Quite a bit of points on Casey's bench there. 21 points from Carson Wentz, 15 points from the Oakland defense. Jack Doyle had a decent day for Indy with 6 catches for 65 yards. For a tight end these days, that's pretty good. Carlos Hyde sitting on Underminer's bench with 25.5 points, so he could have improved there a little bit, but Shady was really good. James White lost most of his touches in New England to LeGarrette Blount, so that's why he only put up 2.4 points. Looks like Carlos Hyde might be a good fantasy pick this year. He had 2 touchdowns and 103 rushing yards to go along with a 2-point conversion. Next matchup, Demarius Stormborn taking the win, the close win away from the waiver wire, dropping the waiver wire down to 0-3. They are our last 0-3 team. And I'm not sure if he knew that or not, but Nick, you're 0-3. Just FYI. You're 0-3. Demarius Stormborn moving up to a 2-1 record with that 9-point win. Matthew Stafford has been big this year, fantasy-wise. Of course, with Marvin Jones going for 200 yards, that does help. Demaryius Thomas with 20 points. It looks like he's going to be catching passes from Trevor Siemian just fine. And Kyle Rudolph was clutch for Minnesota and also clutch for Demarius Stormborn. He had 20 points, 7 catches for 70 yards, and a touchdown. Miami defense was decent against Cleveland as well with 18 points. Mark Ingram sitting on the bench for the waiver wire with 22.7 points. If he would have put him in instead of Forte, he would have won. That's a tough move to make. And Terrell Pryor Sr., I don't blame you for not starting him, Nick, but what a game. I don't know if anybody saw that, but he had 144 catching yards on 8 catches. He had a rushing touchdown. He had 30-some-odd rushing yards. He was also 2 for 4 for passing. He played quarterback in college, and then he actually played quarterback for Oakland a little bit the year before last. And so he actually went 2 for 4 for passing. Cleveland had a really, really good game against Miami. It was very interesting. I was disappointed they didn't win because of all the shit they pulled. Terrell Pryor Sr. with 31 points and numbers just all over the board. Cincinnati Carnage against Vallette's Vengeance, the low-scoring matchup of the week. Vallette's Vengeance finally comes away with the win. I think this was one of 2 people he actually could have beat this week, moving both of their records for Justin and Jesse to 1-2. Final score was 123-112. Devontae Freeman had a big week, 31 points. Like I said, that rushing tandem for Atlanta has been fantastic. He had 150 rush yards and 55 reception yards, putting him over the 200 all-purpose yard mark, along with a touchdown. T.Y. Hilton in the loss did have a big day. He's looking pretty good in Indy. He had 8 catches for 174 and a touchdown, so a big day for him. But with the New England defense and Trevor Siemian putting up almost 29 points, he had 4 touchdowns and 312 yards. Vallette's Vengeance was just enough to come away with the win. Emmanuel Sanders, sitting on Cincinnati Carnage's bench. He put up 2 touchdowns on 9 catches for 117 yards, 32 points. That's a tough one to swallow. He started Brandon Marshall over him, who had 3 catches for 27 yards. Of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick was awful. Getting into the last matchup, I don't think I missed any this week. Killjoys going up against the Browns Dragons. This was the blowout. It wasn't a real huge score by Browns Dragons, but it was a pretty pathetic score for the Killjoys. Final score there was 152-104. It was not close. Aaron Rodgers did have a good day. He had 4 passing touchdowns and 200 yards, but he didn't do a whole bunch after halftime there. DeMarco Murray and David Johnson, the running back tandem for Browns Dragons, put up 26 points each. And he also had Christine Michael sitting on the bench with 25 points. So he actually started the correct 2, but they were all within a point of each other. And that is huge to have 3 running backs put up 75 points in any given week. Even if one is still on your bench, that is pretty good. Seattle defense has not been great this year. They put up 3 points against San Francisco. 3 whole points. They had 1 pick, and that was it. No sacks, no tackles for loss. Arizona defense was decent against Buffalo, putting up 20 points. And sitting on the bench was Zach Miller for Killjoys with 27 points, but he did start Greg Olsen, who had an okay day at 12.4. It's tough to start Zach Miller over Greg Olsen, but maybe that would be some good trade bait. Trying to get rid of one of those 2. Killjoys and Browns Dragons now at 2-1. Let's see here. Let's get into the Superman of the week. There were a lot of things I could have awarded it to. A lot of people. Brown Dragons had 3 running backs with 25 plus points. But it's going to go to Leck and the Underminers starting Minnesota against Carolina. That's a tough one. I did it in my other league, but I'm a huge Vikings fan. If you're not a Vikings fan to start, A defense against Carolina and Cam Newton is bold, but it paid off in a huge way. 42 points for the Minnesota defense. I want to give a shout out to Bassett's Brawlers as well, an honorable mention. They did have the Kansas City defense who put up 36 points, but again, that was against the Jets, who do not have the offensive prowess that Carolina has, despite some of the numbers they put up last year. Brings us right into...
You're such a bitch.
I think I finally found the sound I want to use for that, and this is it.
You're such a bitch.
Yeah, that's perfect. So all of these are just YouTube clips, so I definitely found the one I like. Here, let's play it again.
You're such a bitch.
Yeah, that's perfect. So there's a couple people that I could have went to. I thought about Killjoys for putting Zach Miller on the bench, but again, Olsen had a decent day, and you just can't sit Olsen. Waiver wire could have gotten it just for losing and having so many points on the bench, but he makes it too easy, so we can't give it to him. I'm actually going to give it to Cincinnati Carnage. Emmanuel Sanders on the bench with 32.7 points. Brandon Marshall with 5.7. That little switcheroo right there would have won Cincinnati Carnage the week, but he did not. So he is the Drunken Fumble Week 3 bitch. Let's get into the standings here. Just a quick recap. And we had some changes this week. In first place, Brown Dragons at 2-1. The other 2-1 teams in order: Underminers, Bassett's Brawlers, Atlanta Falcons, Fourth and Lynches, Demarius Stormborn, and the Killjoys. Starting the 1 and 2 teams, myself at number 8, Lecter Gurley, Cincinnati Carnage, Vallette's Vengeance, and the $100 donation coming thanks to the waiver wire, who is 0-3. He's got some moves to make here. He's going to have to do something drastic to get his team shaken up a little bit. But that is your Week 3 Drunken Fumble Commish address. Don't forget about those trades before Week 5. Again, you trade for a player between last week and Week 5, and they will get 10 bonus points during the Week 5 scoring. So make sure everybody gets a trade in. Let's get things moving here a little bit. All hail the Commish.